morning and welcome to the Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller, and we're so happy you're here with us on this Friday. Each and every weekday morning, 9 a.m., we give you a half an hour of today's top weather headlines, some of the big topics going on, and we have got a great show lined up for you today. Let's go ahead and take a look at our headlines, some of the things, the topics we're going to be discussing. And this is one that I think folks are really going to want to hear about. Numerous Virginia vineyards were damaged earlier this week due to that freeze warning we had. You remember central and western parts of Virginia under freeze warning Tuesday morning. It was Monday night into Tuesday. It got so cold. There's a lot of damage. Some vineyards lost a lot of their grapes, and we're going to talk about that. And then we have a local grape grower, someone from Summerwind Vineyard, that's going to talk to us about some of the challenges of growing grapes and kind of talk to us a little bit about what they've experienced and how the weather here is playing into this. But it's really interesting, and Virginia is not alone. That killing frost and freeze extended up through the mid-Atlantic region, up into Maryland, parts of Pennsylvania. So a good section of the East Coast dealing with some trouble with some of the grapes out there. We'll talk about that. In addition to that, we are currently caught up nationally in the worst spring drought on record, and we'll get you updated on that, talk about some of the areas hardest hit. Severe weather. Man, we had tornadoes erupt back in the central U.S. We've got some video and an update on that and the outlook moving forward. In addition, this is the anniversary of the launch of the Hubble Telescope. So we'll look back on that, and we've got some fun facts to pass along as we're getting into that ocean and beach time, and then your weekend outlook. Some of you may be thinking, well, hey, highs today near 80 in Hampton Roads. Maybe you've got plans to get to the beach. We're going to talk about that and give you your full weekend. But we're going to start off talking about grapes and the grape growing situation. Right now, vineyards across the Commonwealth are facing an uncertain season after a freeze this week killed off some of the crops. Gabby Womack takes us to one Charlottesville vineyard working to rebuild.
And we were just watching and hoping and praying that our vines would survive.
That hope didn't hold. After hours of below freezing temperatures overnight, these vines didn't make it.
It's, Mother Nature. You have to accept. She gives, she takes.
Sue Albrecht owns Rosalind Farms and Vineyard. Now she and her team are walking the rows, figuring out what's salvageable.
It's, heartbreaking a little bit to see that, you put a lot of work and get ready for the season.
Franz Ventra, the winery's consultant, says the loss is personal, but not everything is gone. Some vines, shielded by trees, made it through.
These trees actually protected a substantial portion of the vines, so go trees.
Both say it's about assessing what survived and what that means for the season ahead. Even with this setback, they're not giving up.
On the long run, we'll be okay. The vines are going to rebound, they're going to grow back.
Their next step is rebuilding and looking ahead to what's still possible.
So our wine is very high quality and popular, and this freeze isn't able to change any of that.
It's more than a job, it's also a passion.
Yeah.
And so it's very rewarding.
All right, I want to welcome somebody to the program right now. Kim Pugh from Summerwind Vineyards here in Smithfield. They dealt with some cold temperatures as well, but not quite as bad. Thank goodness at Summerwind, they came through in a little bit better shape. But I want to talk to Kim about some of the challenges of grape growing, and you had so much to share with me. About a year and a half ago, Kim and I first met to discuss kind of climate change, and we talked about vectors not dying off during milder winters. But one of the things you stressed, Kim, was how an early season warm-up followed by late season frost could really spell big trouble, and that's what we saw earlier this week.
Absolutely. Good morning, Craig. It's good to see you. It's good to see you. And it was good to see that last piece with some green behind them on those vines. That's very, very good to see. Some of the vineyards lost 70 to 80, 90%. And as you said earlier in the piece, all the way up through Pennsylvania, Maryland, southern Pennsylvania, New York. I also saw some reports even in Ohio and back to Michigan. So quite a bit of damage out there. So what will happen is, as they indicated on that last piece that you interviewed, that they will go through and assess what vines are still living and what green they have, and they will cut back the vines or whatever, however far they have to go. Hopefully there's no trunk damage there, and the vine itself will survive. So what happens is we spoke about this, as you said, a year and a half ago. We have these swings, this seesaw effect with with the climate, and whether or not it's due to climate change, it is a climate issue. So we had a very cold January here, as you know, and we actually did have some damage here for that, but not horrendous. The vines themselves have survived, although we're treating some of the new vines like one-year-old vines again this year. However, then we moved on to at the end of March, beginning of April, we had very warm temperatures. We had out into the western part of the state up into the 80s. So we end up with this where we have early bud break, the shoots, the buds break, the shoots start to grow up. They're very tender. And so I want to just kind of put it in perspective a little bit. It's just like if you fill an ice cube tray, and most people realize that, water, when it freezes, expands a certain percentage, depending, anywhere from 9 to 10%. The same thing happens with living things, with cells. All cells are comprised of water and to a certain degree. And so what happens is when those cells freeze, then the water within the cells turns to crystal, and the cell wall itself ruptures. Well, there's no way for the plant to stand back up. So then you get that drooping, the buds themselves, the foliage, it becomes stunted and actually just dies. It's just like, anything else where the cells are destroyed. So that's essentially the little bit of the science I can give you on what happens with these grapevines when they freeze.
Kim, as we take a look here, early in April, we had temperatures up into the mid-80s. It got a little cooler that second week, but here in Hampton Roads, we were looking at record heat. What does that do? That triggers that natural, reaction from the vines. They start thinking, hey, it's time to go, and they start to produce more. Then you get hit. This was a particularly bad setup, not just for, central Virginia and northern Virginia, but as we mentioned, through the mid-Atlantic. Is this the type of variability that as a wine grower or as a grape grower that you need to be most concerned with?
Absolutely. Not just grape growers, but I'm sure that there were a number of orchards that were hit as well. And, as any farmer knows, agriculture, it's kind of a crapshoot. You never know. You have to rely on the weather for all things, whether it's freeze or excessive rainfall or no rainfall. There are so many things that affect the variability of what's going to happen. So we did see, and so for summer wind, we're fortunate. One, we're here in southeastern Virginia, even though we're close to the coast. We're also surrounded, you and I have discussed in the past, we're a little bit of peninsula here, so we're surrounded by water, or not surrounded, but on three sides. And so I think that does help mitigate some of the issues that we may have with frost. We did sustain some damage, but not excessive, just tips of some of the earlier budding varieties, like our Alvarinho. I've had to cut some when I say a tip, I'm talking an inch or two off, but the buds themselves are still doing fine, and they'll put out some secondary shoots. So we are very fortunate from that aspect. However, when you're in a low-lying area, we had earlier bud break. One of the things I've seen here at Summer Wind is not only did we have earlier bud break, but that warmth caused the shoots to really grow rapidly and tall. Well, so more so than usual in the end of April.
It's interesting, you're there protected with the James and the Pagan River, so that kept your temperatures a little bit warmer, and you came through in pretty good shape. But I'm interested in your thoughts, because you said your winemakers were reaching out saying, hey, a lot of our growers in other parts of the region took the harder hits. How long
Yeah.
before something like that translates to what consumers may find, either with the availability of wines, how much of a lag is there before, these grapes that maybe aren't growing as much in other parts of the Commonwealth or farther north through the region? When does that translate to when we might see some limitations maybe down the road at the table?
So in the short term, what you're going to see is probably you'll see much less of a harvest this year in those vineyards where things were severely affected. And so that less harvest translates to less wine on the table. Fortunately, I think a lot of the vineyards have done well over the last couple of years, so they will have wine in in their inventory. However, the other long-term effect that may be is you never know if we don't have many shoots this year, how healthy the trunk of the vine it is. The entire vine has to stay healthy. If the trunks are healthy and they put out new buds next year, that will be a good thing. The other thing they will rely on in these vineyards this year is they're hoping for secondary bud break. Unfortunately, not all secondary buds are fruitful. So some of that depends on the variety itself. The other thing that we're seeing is that many of the vines affected were the white varieties. In some cases, some Merlot and Cabernet Franc, depending on how low they were planted or if they were planted closer to water or not. So some of it depends on, the whites tend to have earlier bud break. So they're the ones it seems that have been the most affected. But again, that also depends on where the vine is located in the vineyard, where the
Okay.
vineyard is located. So, in the short term and the long run, these vineyards will have to assess, how healthy the vine is overall.
All right. Well, Kim, I thank you so much. I know you're busy right now, continuing to work your vineyard, and I want to thank you so much. And I'll just mention, if you've never been out to Summerwind out in Smithfield, you need to do it. Your tasting room is beautiful, and it's just a really neat place to go. And obviously, Kim, you and your daughter have a lot of knowledge to share. So thank you so much for being with us this morning, and good luck with the upcoming season.
Hey, thank you, Craig. Good to see you.
Take care, Kim. All right, so one of the other things, again, very dry conditions. We're going to take a very short break, and coming up in just a couple of minutes, we're going to take a look at this drought situation across so much of the country. It's fueling wildfires in Georgia and Florida, tornadoes hitting the U.S. heartland overnight. There's a lot to share with you right after this. Welcome back to the Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller. We are still under moderate drought here in the immediate metro area around Hampton Roads. We've seen more of the areas to the north and west fill in with severe drought, still severe drought south of the Albemarle Sound, and extreme drought out to the west, Roanoke Rapids to Rocky Mount, Raleigh, western parts of North Carolina. Then you get into some parts of the areas down to the south, Georgia and Florida, in exceptional drought, still exceptional drought across Colorado, back into Idaho. There are big problems. You know the old saying, April showers bring May flowers? Well, if that's true, the blooms may be down next month. Right now, as you can see, almost 63% of the country is under a drought. It's the largest drought on record for the spring. The southeast plains and the west, obviously particularly dry, as I just showed you. And those drought conditions hitting so much of the U.S. are hindering firefighting operations in Florida and Georgia. Meanwhile, the U.S. heartland is getting hit with huge tornadoes and powerful storms. Reed Binion reports.
Honestly, I think they're in shock. It's very quiet. They're coming in. There's not much movement around the hotel.
A hotel in South Georgia doing what it can to help residents forced to evacuate amid raging wildfires.
I think that they're just really scared of what's going to happen and where their next moves are.
Tragically, some have already lost their homes, only able to look out onto the ash-covered ground where their houses once stood.
This continues to be a very high-threat environment with a lot of unknowns. We cannot control the weather.
That weather very, very dry.
Overall in our region, we're experiencing exceptional drought conditions, very low humidities, high fire danger indicators with wind.
Georgia, along with much of the continental U.S., is facing a major drought. Nearly 2/3 of the lower 48 states are affected as of this week. The U.S. Drought Monitor says it's the largest spring drought on record, taking a heavy toll on the west, the southeast, and the plains, a region that is also facing a tornado threat, including Oklahoma, where this massive twister struck on Thursday night. The destructive stovepipe tornado in northern central Oklahoma was on the ground for more than 30 minutes, leaving injuries and significant damage in its wake. I'm Reed Binion reporting.
All right, so as we take a look at the nation right now, still some rain left over from the same system that produced those large tornadoes in Oklahoma, that stovepipe tornado. It's basically like a single kind of vent pipe or stovepipe. That's what it looks like. It doesn't necessarily funnel down to a point, but rather it's just a column of rotating air, a powerful, mature tornado that you just saw there. As we zoom in, we're not looking at severe weather, but we are looking at heavy rain right now back across portions of Missouri and Arkansas. Those storms were ripping. That's when they were severe, and there were numerous warnings. Right now, what we're seeing here, it's become just more widespread, kind of moderate rain. The storms have kind of lost their punch. Now, that being said, there is a potential for more severe weather a little farther to the south with the same system as that frontal boundary carves farther to the east and the southeast, and there is a level 3 or enhanced threat over northeast Texas, southeast Oklahoma, and southwest Arkansas. Level 2 or slight risk all the way across much of Arkansas, Louisiana, and into Mississippi. Level 1 threat up around Detroit and Toledo, back through Indianapolis, and you can see again areas just north of Houston, back out towards Dallas. They're all going to be watching for storms as well. Now again, that level 2 threat from Jackson up to Memphis, back towards Dallas, and this area here, the area of greatest concern. But the concern here is most elevated for potential hail. Look at that. You could see some large hailstones in that part of the country. Again, winds, always a concern with some of these stronger storms. And then you have your elevated tornado threat for this area here in the orange, especially basically from Dallas back over towards Jackson and areas into central Mississippi as well. As we take a look, some of the other communities include Shreveport, just north of Alexandria. You can see Monroe, El Dorado, up towards Greenville and Texarkana, all included in this elevated area. And then back out to the west, you can see Sherman, Texas there also kind of, right on the edge. Dallas there basically technically in level 2 or slight risk, but close enough that they need to watch those major metropolitan areas as well. Now, the severe weather outlook, looking ahead to Saturday, the focus is a little farther to the north again, Oklahoma into parts of western Arkansas and southern Kansas, and then again that elevated tornado threat really centered on Oklahoma. Looking ahead to Sunday, that threat of severe storms still back in this part of the country, so they are going to be concerned with more potential for damaging storms from Kansas City through Concordia, Wichita, Dodge City, and Hays, Kansas, all under the gun. That is the severe weather outlook. We're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, it's a major milestone for space exploration. NASA has unveiled its newest space telescope and why scientists say it could change how we see the universe. Welcome back to the Weather Desk. Did you know today, back in 1990, the Hubble Telescope was sent to space? The Space Shuttle Discovery launched with the Hubble on board, opening a brand new window to the universe. Orbiting about 340 miles above Earth, Hubble avoids atmospheric distortion, giving us views of distant galaxies, nebulas, and black holes. It captured some of the most iconic images ever taken. NASA hopes it will keep delivering discoveries for years to come. Meanwhile, NASA unveiled its fully assembled Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope this week. The instrument has been undergoing tests at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland. It's named after Nancy Grace Roman, NASA's first chief of astronomy who helped create the Hubble Space Telescope. Now, according to NASA, Roman can take images of space 100 times larger and 1,000 times faster than Hubble. It's scheduled for launch in September. Cannot wait for those images. All right, we're taking a live look at the Virginia Beach oceanfront. There's a lot happening this weekend. I've got to look at your forecast coming up. Welcome back to the Weather Desk. Let's talk about the weekend weather. Skies are mainly clear right now. We're going to find a chance for a few stray showers late afternoon or evening, mainly off to the north. There's a backdoor front that comes through. It's not a guarantee that we're going to see them, but about a 30% chance. I think we'll see maybe a little bit more than what this graph model is projecting. Some of the other models do bring a little more activity farther south. So just keep an umbrella with you, or at least check the radar before committing to your outdoor activities tonight. Scattered wet weather more likely later tomorrow night, and into early Sunday. You see that coming through, and there is more wet weather on the horizon. Again, after Sunday morning, things settle down. Monday looks good. Some more showers a little later into next week. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Weather Desk. We didn't have time to get to Hunter's fun facts on the ocean. We'll save that for a future show. Guys, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time from the Weather Desk.